Hey guys, Kyle, the Death Knight of Anime here, bringing you my review for My Hero Academia, Season 4, Episode 3. And I'm not gonna lie, guys, revisiting this episode, just revisiting, just from revisiting this pretty much content in general through the anime now, it actually brought back a lot of nostalgic feelings. And honestly, watching this episode, I would dare say it even gave me a new and fresh perspective on a lot of my thoughts on this material compared to how compared to how I originally thought when I read this stuff in the manga. Like when I first read this stuff in the manga, I was young, I was naive, and I wasn't as great. I wasn't as great at reading between the finer lines of things. But yeah, I think it's safe to say that revisiting this material, it actually gave me a definitely new and fresh perspective based on a lot of this stuff right now, and just kind of looking back on it, and realizing how this is all going to play out too, I guess. Um, with that said, so but with that said, in order to start off with this review, I definitely need to jump ahead a bit to I need to jump ahead a bit to the end of the episode where Izuku basically comes face to face with Overhaul and the little horn girl little horn girl from the opening, whose name is, I think, was revealed in this episode to be Eddie. And remember how I basically said last episode how this arc kind of suffers from a couple of narrative issues near its bookend, and how Overhaul, for as good of a villain as he is only a basically small part of the is only like a piece and a part of the issue. Well, Eddie is unfortunately the second part of the problem with this arc, and there's no way I can get around in any kind of subtle manner in which I can say this, but Eddie is basically a pretty much Deus Ex Machina in quirk-based form. And don't get me wrong, you will sympathize with Eri. She goes through some pretty heavy, eye-popping shit throughout this arc. So, in pretty much terms of emotional stakes and getting invested in pretty much the stuff she goes through, you will get invested in her. But in terms of basically the role Eri plays in the climax, that part is a little more difficult, and definitely as a reviewer, I can definitely say when we get to that point, I think it's more like that. I'm gonna struggle I'm gonna struggle when just from terms of rationalizing it. But maybe, but like I said before, a lot of my perspective on this material just from this episode has already changed. So maybe maybe there's a chance that when we get to that climax, there's a good chance that my perspective and my thoughts on the climax will have changed too with it. But I guess it's just a matter of waiting and see, I suppose. But yeah, Eddie is kind of one of the major issues with this arc, and why Koei and why the mangaka even had to come out and say that he realized he basically kind of fucked up with this arc in its bookend. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see just how the climax plays out, I suppose. So, alright, so with that said, the episode picks up where it left off with Izuku, meeting, with Izuku and basically Night-Eye meeting, and the one thing I appreciate, more than even more now than I did when reading the manga, is that if you remove all the serious tension from the if you remove all the serious tension from the initial meeting, it's really just a confrontation of the fanboys, which does add a hint of hilarity to the whole thing, to it in a way. But one thing I will say is that basically when we first get to the scene of Night Eye like from stamping down on his desk, the humor of the moment is kind of downgraded compared to the manga, because in the manga, it basically looks like that from when Night Eye is stamping, in the manga, like when Night Eye stamps, looks like he's stamping in rapid succession. But here, it was just a continuous and repeated loop of the same motion. So with that, it's probably more a little bit of an animation issue than anything else. But I think what Bones I think what I would have preferred if Bones did in that particular moment is if they added like a blur effect, or basically sped it up in order to make that motion just a little funnier. Um, and I know that in itself is basically a bit of a weird thing in order to start off talking about, but but yeah, I'm not gonna lie, that one tiny detail, it did kind of bug me a little bit. And I think a good majority of it is because that particular one, it could have been funnier, even funnier than it was in the manga, but because I guess of production choices, it wasn't as funny as in the manga. Um, Now, on a more serious note, Night Eye does bring up a very good point when it comes to Izuku in this chapter, which is that if you really think back to everything Izuku has done up to this point, a lot of his focus has been on improving his control of One for All, but he's never actually given much thought as to what he as a person is going to be capable of doing in terms of bringing hope back to a world that is basically slowly and steadily falling into chaos. And don't get me wrong, we've seen moments of what he's going to do when it comes to inspiring individuals and saving them. But if he really hopes to become the new symbol of peace, then he has to start thinking even beyond the limitations of hero work and realize there is an expectation from society going forward that everyone is looking for that new symbol of peace, that new person who can step up and basically and pretty much lead society into supposedly a pretty much brighter future. And because pretty much the moment that pretty much All Might had retired and fallen from grace, that pretty much set every single villain in this world on, like, that caused every single villain in this world in order to descend upon society. And now society is just looking for someone, anyone that can like give them hope again, and make them feel safe. So if so yeah all and really like and really, like, with Izuku, Punch mastering One for All is really just the first step. The second step here, obviously, is that Izuku has to discover what type of hero he wants to be, that can remain true to himself, while also maintain the pressure of society. And one specific thing that was made clear that I really liked with this episode is that just because All Might trust Izuku with his power doesn't mean everyone is going to be supportive of that decision. Like, All Might and Gran Torino were supportive, but Night Eye, he basically has much higher expectations than both All Might and Gran Torino combined. So, like, he's a and it's because for as pretty much harsh as pretty much Night Eye's words were, he isn't wrong either. He basically knows, he's worked with All Might. He basically knows All Might. He basically knows what kind of what it pretty much takes, what qualifications are needed in order to truly like step in out of All Might's shadow and basically into the spotlight and become like new protector and the new person and the new hero who basically can lead the world down, that can continue to basically maintain peace in the world today. So yeah. And yeah, let's talk about. And with that said, let's talk about the reveal from. Well, the reveal from last week that's been brought to the forefront this week, which is that Izuku was not All Might's one and only choice in order to inherit his quirk. In fact, for a time, Mirio was considered in order to be All Might's successor. And the thing is, this is one of those reveals that just flat out says there's not a single damn thing that's special about Izuku, and in reality, everything that's basically led him to becoming All Might's successor, as was led him to this point, was just that he happened to be in the right place at the right time, and in some respects, I definitely can see that I can definitely see that there's going to be an argument that's probably going to be raised that this reveal, it almost kind of ruins the narrative of the story. But at the same time, was Peter Parker destined to become Spider-Man? No, it was just something that happened to him, and he figured out what in the end, he basically figured out what it is he wanted to do with his power, and from there, he became a hero in his own right. It's the same deal here. Like even though Izuku himself isn't special, he's pretty much still gifted with these powers, and right now he's figuring what kind of and he's figuring out what kind of hero he wants to be. The only difference being is that there are the added expectations of needing to prove that basically All Might did make the right decision in choosing him. And throughout this journey, you are going to see just how much of a gap there is between Izuku and Mirio. Don't get me wrong, Izuku is basically great, is a great main character, and he does go through his constant changes even past this point in the series. But Mirio, it's like, yeah, he is like, it does make you, it does, there are going to be a lot of points throughout this arc where you're going to see that, yeah, Mirio, in a lot of ways, he pretty much is like, he almost was like, was pretty much the pretty much the perfect successor to All Might at the time. Um, and okay, so I guess final thing to talk about is after all the thing with after all the stuff with the after all the stuff with basically Night Eye's trial and him testing Izuku. After that, we pretty much cut back to the dorms, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe that was an anime only scene because in the manga after Izuku's trial, it immediately cuts to like the next day, and here it basically gave us a bit of a semi-early introduction to another pro hero, Hawks, who, without giving anything away, I will say does end up becoming one of the more intriguing characters in the series. Another thing that I think this anime only scene does is that it does fill the gap in basically showing us how the other students, like basically Ochiko and Asui and all them, how they all ended up working on under the other big three as well. So yeah, a little bit of filler that actually kind of that definitely filled a little bit of a gap there too. But yeah, guys, that's my review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Mr. Crunchyroll. Death Knight of Anime, signing off. Later, guys.